you who are starting your morning with us in Sydney, thank you. I am absolutely honored to have the first post coffee and then joining us for our conversation. All right. Well, then I'm just going to go ahead and get us started. It looks like we have a pretty great group of people that have joined us today. Again, as I mentioned, my name is Emma. I am the community manager for StartOut. And today we are hosting you for marketing yourself as an out entrepreneur with two of my very special guests here who I will introduce in just a moment. If this is your first time to start out, I just want to give you a touch base as to what our mission is. We are a nonprofit that solely focuses on increasing the number, diversity, and impact of LGBTQ entrepreneurs and amplify their stories to drive the economic empowerment of the community. We were founded in 2009, and we are continuing to grow. Right now, we have built a community of over 17,000 members, and we serve over 300 founders every month. We are, in essence, a community that focuses on networking and entrepreneurship, building up each other, and allowing people to be their best and biggest selves as a part of the queer founder community. This happens through one-on-one mentorship, it happens through office hours, it happens through events, and through the leadership of folks like our programming board members who've joined me today. If you're interested in more of these services, or if you are interested in becoming a part of our programming board, please reach out. We are actively planning for next year. A little bit more about StartOut's overall reach. We have a few different programs, as I've mentioned. Our Growth Lab being our accelerator program, which is also accepting applications for founders coming up soon. Over 33 of our graduated companies have raised over $107 million, and we just celebrated our first unicorn graduate out of the Growth Lab. So congratulations to founders everywhere. We also have over 300 mentors that are serving and supporting our founder community. This continues to grow as we focus on things like expert fundraising, investing, marketing, and etc. Our founder portal is a way for people to continue to get engaged. And of course, we promote and try to shout you all out over social media. Finally, we would like to say a great thank you to our sponsors. This is absolutely not possible without the help that we get from this corporate sponsors and community partners within StartOut's neighborhood. So thank you to all of them who make this possible. If this is your first year with us, do know that in a couple weeks, we have our annual Equity Summit coming up. Save the date, mark your calendar. This is an all-day event that starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time and goes to 1 p.m. Pacific time with multiple tracks of excellent experts sharing about how to make your mark as an out entrepreneur. And then without further ado, now that I have waxed poetic about StartOut to its entirety, I am so excited to introduce you all to our featured experts. AJ and Danielle, it is so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to let both of you introduce yourselves and I will exit the stage. But AJ, as our event lead for today, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Where are you going? Don't leave us. How's everyone doing? Buenas noches. I see some Mexicans, some people in Mexico. All right, look at you, learning new languages today. So I'm AJ De Leon. I am the CEO of Innovare Social Innovation Partners. We are an education technology company headquartered in Chicago and working across the country, supporting leaders in the education ecosystem to use data strategically. So it's been an exciting journey for me. I'm part of the StartUp programming board. And it's just great to be here with all of you tonight. It's just exciting and can't wait to share more about our story. I also am happy to tell you that just about a month ago, my company raised a $3 million seed round. So there's a lot that we can talk about in terms of how to use and leverage, right, your identity, who you are, to not just, incubate, but grow and scale and hopefully fundraise for your own business. So I'm excited to share more about my story, but also want to, share the stage here with my friend Danielle, who I would love for her to introduce herself and tell you more about her.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm really excited to be here with you all, so thank you for having me. So I am a queer, multi-passionate entrepreneur. I co-own a website agency with my wife. It's called Tale of Two Creatives. And I also own a coaching business where I empower millennials through personal and professional development. I'm really excited to share some of the marketing lessons I've learned along the way. I have an 11-year background in digital marketing, social media specifically. So looking forward to your questions and looking forward to this very fruitful conversation with AJ.
Yeah, well, Daniel and I, we just have so much to share with all of you, and I'm just so glad to see all these faces. I'm clicking through here, everyone. So if you can join us via video, let us know, because we'll definitely be inspired by seeing your face. And I see, oh wow, a lot of people just turned it on. Good. Thank you. Welcome. Hi, Simon. Hi, Scott. I see you now. How are you all? Addison, I see you. Well, it's just great to be here. And the first question, and I mean, you all are here to learn about how it's best to market ourselves, right, as an out entrepreneur. So, Danielle, I think you and I, when we met, we chatted a lot about what authenticity means and how that sort of shows up when we are trying to market ourselves as out entrepreneurs. So tell us a little bit more about authenticity, what it means to you, and how we can leverage that to succeed.
Yeah, great question. I think that showing up authentically really means not holding any part of yourself back, right? So in doing a lot of digital marketing for businesses, everyone always wants to know, how do I market myself? How do I show up online? How do I put out a social media message that other people will really want to respond to? And what I've learned and what I hear in those things is, how do I show up as what other people want or need me to be? And I don't necessarily think that's the right perspective. I think it's a great start, but if you're a new entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, what have you, and this is something that I personally struggled with for quite a while, I think what we really need is a lesson in really just learning how to be ourselves, and not even learn how to be ourselves at its core, because you know who you are, but you really need to give yourself permission to show up in your vulnerability and use your vulnerability and this story that is so uniquely you that nobody else in this entire world shares as your superpower. So I think that's what showing up authentically means. And I think we kind of lose a bit of ourselves working in corporate and growing up and being what the world needs us to be. But really, it's knowing that when you show up as your most authentic version of yourself, other people will respect you for that and love you for that and want to do business with you for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think all of us, right, that are here, we're all entrepreneurs. We're all trying to make a mark in the community. And unfortunately, as you all know, not a lot of us are as successful as maybe sort of quote unquote the mainstream entrepreneur. And it can be challenging, right, to be your full authentic self when you are fundraising or when you're talking about your company or in specific circles. So probably you've experienced this, Danielle. So how have you navigated being quote unquote different or unique or the unicorn in the room, so to speak? So that you can succeed in your business, and what are maybe some specific ways in which you've overcome some challenges that maybe the world of entrepreneurship has presented to you?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it required a lot of unlearning from the corporate world. I used to show up as somebody that covered up all of my tattoos, tucked in my septum ring, was buttoned up, wore flats. I hate flats. I hate dressing up. I want to be comfortable, right? So it took a while to realize that I was also an authority figure in the room, and that I didn't kind of have to like cater to all these other people that I respected, but that I at least thought didn't view me in that way. So after getting a lot of no's, right, and figuring out why that was, I decided to just bake being queer into my business. Like, it's in my Instagram bio, it's on my website. And if you haven't actually gone to either of those things, and maybe you're referred directly to me and we get on the phone, we actually bake that into our onboarding and proposal process, right? So if we're having a conversation and making sure that they're a good fit to work with us, we say, hey, like, all right, this is great. We can definitely help meet your goals. But before we move forward, we only work with people who reflect our values. So we look for 3 key qualities with with the businesses that we work with. The first is that they have to be collaborative.
Oh.
Every project is a mutual give and take. So we want to make sure that we're keeping their project moving along. The second is coachable. We want people to trust that we're using our expertise to the best of our ability, and that we're going to empower and educate them every step of the process. And the third one is very intentional that we bake in, and that's you have to be inclusive. So we say upfront, we are a woman and queer-owned business, and that we use our profits to contribute to causes that we care about, one of which is LGBTQ initiatives. So at the end of that conversation, we literally ask, is there any reason you wouldn't be collaborative, coachable, or inclusive? And if the answer is no, then we know that we don't want to do business with that person, and we politely decline.
Yeah, we're getting some interesting feedback here in the chat, saying, wow, I wish doing that wouldn't completely kill my business. So there's still fear, right? That like being sort of, as you're saying, leveraging your superpower may lead to your business not being successful. So we can't wait to talk to you more about that in the chat. But I'll totally back you up in some of that, because I can tell you all that, especially working in education, being queer is not necessarily what you start with when you're having conversations. I see some people laughing. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm the gay person in the room, right? In the school. It's like, whoa, it's still taboo actually to talk about your sexuality, right? Like, well, everybody has their wife or their husband and talking about what they did over the weekend or whatever. Teachers are still afraid, right, to share who they are in front of their students. And especially the younger they are, the more the parents get engaged. And so it's really, it can be tricky. So we totally understand some of you who are putting things in the chat like, well, can I really do that? But I guess let me tell you, it's sort of quote unquote, not as an expert, but as just a fellow community member, is what I've done is what probably all of you are already doing, which is just being yourself, right? Like trying to build relationships with people, and especially in the entrepreneurship space, where if you are trying to start a business and scale it and maybe fundraise, right now there is a sort of hunger for people who are ready for to leverage that superpower, with all this unfortunate situations that have happened in the last year, right? With the pandemic, with racial justice, with the Me Too movement, with everything's happening. I think that is our opportunity right now to give others the opportunity to walk the talk of equity, and really say like, okay, you say you're about equity, you say you're about everyone, right? We mean everyone, not just, diversity when it comes to like specific boxes, but we're talking about the people who have all the boxes, right? And all of us are a lot of things, right? We're not just one thing. And so I think in my experience, what I've done is really, come into the room with those different pieces and saying, introducing myself as a gay Latinx, immigrant, education powered, empowered man, right? And I think when people see that, they really do respond, and building authentic relationships with them can lead to very interesting things. In my case, I actually didn't have a lot of people that I could connect with here in Chicago. And I know there's some Chicago folks here, so definitely looking forward to connecting with you after. But I think in terms of the ed tech space, it's a really like nascent sort of scene, so to speak. And I didn't have a lot of peers. Oh, lights. And so here it comes. So I'm like, what happened? So that was like the universe talking to me. But yeah, I mean, I think what I did is, what, let me join StartOut and let me find out like what are other people thinking, what are their fears, how are they navigating this entrepreneurship space, even if it's in Australia or in other places in the country or in the world, right? And I found my community, I found my tribe here with all of you. And I think that really empowered me to not just, lead with that specific part of my identity, but actually made a lot of great friends that introduced me to the folks at Gay Angels. And then through them, I actually got an investment. And, my cap table right now, has the majority of the people that are on there are people of color, queer people, women. So it's not, impossible to get your own people to actually invest in your idea. And what I realized is that that's something that we should do more of, instead of trying to fit in and play the game that hasn't been set up for us to win, right? We need to redefine the game, and we need to play it in a way that others are unable to, because we have a better way of doing that, you know, and we can even maybe dress a little bit better, you know, or come in looking a little bit different, right? Wearing that septum ring or that hat, you know, and being noticed, right? Because people, I mean, especially during the pandemic, there was a lot of, you know, Zoom calls and things, and VCs and other people are partners, clients, right? They're seeing people online. So being able to sort of present yourself as somebody who's memorable, I think was very helpful. And honestly, I was different in that way, and it was fine, and it was a way that helped me navigate the whole fundraising cycle. So I guess in a nutshell, what I'll tell you is, at least for me, being who I am and being different was an asset when it came to fundraising, because it set me apart from the competition. People remembered who I was. And also I actually asked them, like, okay, you say you're about somebody that's different and you're about equity. I went on your website, you don't have anybody on there who looks like me, or you don't have anyone who is in an education company, or you don't have anyone from the Midwest, whatever it was, you know, I used to like something that they didn't have as a way to give them an opportunity to prove themselves as true allies. And believe it or not, it worked. In many situations, they were like, you know what? Nobody has ever brought that up. I love that. Nobody has ever brought up that there's no women in my, you know, board or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I just noticed that you didn't have a board member or nobody, I didn't have the right pronouns for this or whatever. So I'm just telling you, it's not about educating people or trying to position yourself above anyone or anything. It's just about being yourself and just building the right relationships. So hopefully you agree, but I see some people nodding. I see others, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned something super interesting, just about like equal and equitable representation with companies. And I think I saw a tweet of all places of just like how if in cities like New York and San Francisco, we're looking at these huge companies that have access to the most diverse populations in our country, and there's still not clear representation at the company, that reveals a systemic issue, right? Obviously. So it's more important than ever for us to show up and market ourselves as queer entrepreneurs, because that gives us a seat at the table, right? We need that economic equality in order to actually achieve true equality, get working capital for our businesses, and make sure that we're being part of the decisions that are being made so that we can't be ignored or forgotten or marginalized in the future like we have been through history. And, you know, if you look at even, 10 years ago, even probably today, you watch TV and movies and you so rarely see yourself represented, right? You see a straight person representing you or the idea of you. It's time for us to be our message rather than let somebody who has no idea who we are or what we've been through be our message. So, yeah, I wanted to share that because the more that we build wealth, and not wealth in the sense of getting rich, just wealth in a sense that it gives us a seat at the table.
Yeah, and I think, I always say, like, I don't just want a seat at the table, I want to change the entire seating arrangement, So if you were sitting over there, I want you to sit over here now and have a different peer to talk to, because you're comfortable in your seat. You always had that corner seat. Now you got to sit over there, so you get a different perspective, So I think that is something that I definitely encourage all of you to do when you walk into the room. It's like, really take the seat of maybe someone who's too comfortable in that seat. And it's okay, because I'm telling you, being who we are, people appreciate that. And by the way, anyone who wants a connection to Angels or anyone like that, I have some people in the chat sending me a message. Happy to make those connections. Happy to pay that forward. It was one of my sisters from, StartOut who, introduced me to Lorenzo, and I'm happy to make that, pay that forward to someone else, who's fundraising and or any of the other investors. And by the way, you can Google my company, you'll see who my investors are. If you want to meet any of those people, whether it's Portfolio in the Bay Area, Women Powered Fund, or Chingona Ventures here in Chicago, let me know. Happy to connect you with any of them. And Danielle, I know we're going to go into breakout rooms, and we want to hear from you there. And we're going to basically ask you to sort of share with us how you intend to leverage your authentic story in order to market yourself and your business. Can we talk a little bit more on the business side? And you talked about wealth, and although I think they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Social capital and capital, and I think we do need to have more people in our community making decisions and influencing the society, the media, everything that you discussed. How have you found yourself leveraging your identity specifically for business in terms of how you've marketed? I know you talked about your website and ways like that, but let's talk a little bit behind the scenes, like how has being who you are, helped you in your business?
Yeah, gosh, great question. So at my core, right, I'm just like an introvert who wants to feel like what I'm doing has worth and value. And I kind of want to reframe that question a little bit. I think it's how we kind of bring ourselves to the table and understand what we want in business, right, through the lens of who we are, and not so much like the goals, the financial goals that we set and that we want to hit, which are wonderful to hit, but the kind of guiding light that I've used in my business is, what's my why and how do I want to feel? And growing up, without getting into like personal details, like my baseline was always chaos, right? It was always just like running from stuff and having anxiety and all this kind of stuff. But what I realized that I needed to infuse in my business when I was like, what do I want this to look like, was that I wanted to feel peace. And to me, that means not necessarily needing to scale to something that's multi-million dollars or even close to it. It's really figuring out the systems and the tech that I can put into place to help me achieve peace. And to me, that looks like time and location freedom. So what can I outsource? What can I automate to keep my business small and support that feeling that I want to feel? So yeah, I use that baseline to seek out more of the clients that I want to work with, the projects that I want to work on, and really the relationships that I want to build. And anything that seeks to disrupt my peace, I'm willing to say no to that money, because my mental health is worth more. So I use that kind of as my guiding light.
Yeah, well, I've learned that not all money is good money, so that's for sure. And I have given people refunds with that. But in my business, I mean, I think there's a couple of ways that I've leveraged like my LGBT identity. First is through branding. Like if you go through my website, you'll see our huge focus on people who are different in terms of, because people want to your point earlier, people don't see themselves. So I literally tell my graphic designer, I want you to choose a student who we cannot tell if they're a girl or boy, quote unquote. Like I want you to pick the kid with the purple hair, like put that on the picture, like I want the kids to see, and the adults to see their students, right? The reality of who we are in the real world. Because a lot of the media, a lot of the websites, all the pictures that you talked about, these sort of cisgender, specific types. I mean, if you go on Shutterstock and you just type in parents, right? You're gonna get certain types of parents, right? And so I specifically choose like a slide in my deck that has two mommies or two daddies or somebody, them walking them to the school, or maybe just one, one parent or an older sibling or whatever, like different kinds of families, kids with disabilities, a blind child, things like that. So I know that as being a gay man, right, I don't see myself in different places. And I know that I'm hungry to see myself, right? And so what do? I do that for others. I project that sort of inspirational imagery in my company's Instagram, in my company's website, because people want to see themselves. And from a business standpoint, it's, I think, smart business. People are like, hey, look, I see myself now. This company probably understands me, right? And so that connection helps me. So, and it's similar to kind of what you're saying, like you obviously don't want to be discriminated against, which is why you choose your clients. And that makes a lot of sense. And I would say that's another second thing that I do too. I recently had an experience in a school in Silicon Valley. I won't say the name of it, but let's say it's from a specific community that is very wealthy, and they had in their motto that they're like anti-vaccine and masks and all that. And when we were meeting with them, we were like, okay, I don't know if this is the right school to work with. I mean, they definitely have the money, they definitely have the need. But when we looked at their mission statement, it said like, oh, we don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're like, okay, I don't think this is going to be a good client for us. So I think to your point, like knowing who not to work with can really save you a lot of pain, because sometimes you think like, okay, I'm going to get this contract, right? But maybe by saying in the meeting, I was like, oh, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. These are sort of like our values. And again, not to impose any values on you, we respect like, who you are and your school identity. But I don't think that this is going to work well, so it's not a good fit for us. And I think being able to say no, to your point, feeling empowered to say no, I think comes from my LGBT background, right? And being able to choose now my family, right, so to speak. You know how we always talk about like our community being like a chosen family. Sometimes for some of us it is, right? Because we're rejected from our own families or whatever. It wasn't my experience, but I know other people have had that experience, and I totally sympathize with that. So do the same thing business-wise. Like you don't have to.
That's why we're here, right? Like this is our
Yeah.
chosen family for like an entrepreneurial community, because
Yeah.
all of the business that I've gotten, almost always 90% of it, it's referral based. It's somebody who worked with me prior, somebody that I know that this other person knows. And that's how I really started to scale, because it's people that you trust, right? And the more that we work together and network to lift each other up, give each other exposure to people in our network, then the more we're just going to see ourselves reflected. We're going to see us represented everywhere. And that representation is what changes conversations, especially like in the business space. So having a community like this one is super special.
Yeah, and speaking of, and the last point that I will make before we move to breakout rooms is leveraging the chambers of commerce. So the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, is so helpful to all of us. And, the certification, the LGBT certification that, they can get you, if you are 51% owner, LGBT owner of your business, you can get all these different pieces of, contracts and different sort of get on lists that you're not, I didn't know about all this until I met with the chamber leader here, who was just like, oh yeah, like, and the connections, right, that have been made through that. So I think, unfortunately, right, not everybody can be out. We understand that there's still, our society is not in a place where all people feel safe being who they are. But if you are going to be if you're going to be out there, might as well make something out of it. In other words, you know what I mean? And use it to your advantage, and use it as a way to market yourself. And like, I know that when I show up at an event here for EdTech, I'm probably going to be the only gay man in there, And so instead of saying like, oh, let me stay in the corner, it's like, no, let me lead with that. And let me actually say like, oh, this is what's different. Oh, about me. And VCs and other sharks, they care about that. They care about the person who's like confident in the room and can tell a good story. You know what I mean? Because it's all about that. And I can tell you that thirdly, like in a couple of weeks, I'll be presenting at one of my investors LP meetings, and his LPs are Apple, Twitter, and PayPal. I think he chose me because I'm like the unicorn, you know what I mean? The impact focused business, the business that's successful, the gay man, the Latino, like everything. And that is something that makes them look good, right? In front of the people that are funding them. So don't be afraid if you are that person. Maybe your business is something different, like what you're doing, right? Or it's a fintech company, or it's a whatever, like something different. That is what makes you better. I'm telling you, like that is what makes you better. Everybody's the same. When you all know, you've met with the people, everybody's like has the little t-shirts and they have the tech company, and but it's like, what's different about you? Like, we're all the same. No, like what's different is, oh no, my company is sustainable, or I do this, or I do that, and or that's something that is really going to be your competitive advantage. So hopefully you remember that. But Daniel, how do you feel about maybe we go into breakout rooms and get to know some of the folks in the room?
I feel great. Let's do it.
Right. Great. What StartOut, would you take us there with your magic? All right. I see.
Be in there.
Let's do it.